The Galactic Council's docking bay was loud with the sound of machines and voices in 100 different tongues. Ships from every corner of known space floated in orderly lines, their hulls flashing with the colors of their homeworlds. To the human delegation, it was overwhelming, like stepping into a sea of light and noise. Marcus Hale, chief engineer for the Terran fleet, walked behind his captain with calm but alert eyes. Unlike the others on his team, he wasn't dazzled by the display. He was too busy studying the details, the pattern of the docking clamps, the movement of maintenance drones, and the flicker of power lines running beneath the metal floor. Details always mattered, especially when dealing with alien technology. The humans were newcomers here. Earth had only been a member of the Council for 5 short years. In that time, they had made allies, but they were still treated as outsiders by many. The galaxy's older species often looked down on them, fragile, unpredictable, too young to understand the weight of interstellar politics. Marcus had heard all the comments before. Humans are reckless, they said. Humans break more than they fix. He didn't argue. Instead, he let his work speak for itself. Today was supposed to be routine. The Terran fleet was assisting with joint patrol duties, and the Council had assigned a human team to cooperate with the Tishari, one of the most respected warrior civilizations in the galaxy. The Tishari were tall, silver-skinned, and known for their strict discipline. They valued perfection in movement, speech, and thought. To them, even a single mistake was a stain on honor. Marcus wasn't sure how long he would last with them. When the human team entered the Tishari docking area, the air grew colder. The Tishari crew stood in formation, their posture straight as blades. At their front was Commander Saria, a woman whose presence demanded attention. Her uniform gleamed, her silver eyes narrowed with sharp judgment. She looked at the humans, as though measuring them against an invisible scale, and finding them lacking. "Humans," she said, her voice clear and cool. "The Council has placed you under my command during this patrol. Follow orders and we will avoid unnecessary complications." Captain Rhodes, leader of the Terran team, offered a polite nod. "We're honored to serve, Commander. Our engineer, Marcus Hale, is ready to assist with your systems if needed." Saria's gaze flicked to Marcus. For a moment she studied him, her expression unreadable. Then she turned away. "Our systems do not break," she said. "Your engineer will not be necessary." Marcus didn't take offense. He'd learned long ago that pride spoke louder than reason among many species. But as the humans settled into their assigned quarters, he kept his ears open. He heard whispers from Tishari officers about a stabilizer malfunction on their ship. Something in the gravity control wasn't aligning properly. It was a small problem. Too small. For their commander to admit, Marcus knew better. Small problems grew into big ones if ignored. Hours later, when the joint fleet prepared for departure, alarms sounded in the Tishari command deck. The artificial gravity flickered, tilting the floor slightly under their feet. For most species, it was a mild inconvenience, but for the Tishari, who trained their entire lives to move with perfect grace, the sudden imbalance was humiliating. Officers stumbled, tools clattered, and even Commander Saria gripped the edge of a console to steady herself. Marcus, standing nearby as an observer, didn't wait for permission. He rushed to the stabilizer panel, pulling open a set of access ports. Wires sparked, the magnetic coils humming unevenly. "Don't touch that," one Tishari officer snapped, his face pale with outrage. Marcus ignored him. "Your secondary coil is out of sync. If I don't bypass it, the whole gravity field will collapse." His hands moved quickly, splicing wires with a small tool from his belt. Saria staggered toward him, her balance off, eyes sharp. "Human, stand down." Marcus didn't even look up. "Unless you want everyone floating into the ceiling, I suggest you let me finish." For a tense moment, silence filled the deck, broken only by the hum of failing systems. Then sparks leapt, again, and Marcus twisted the final wire into place. The stabilizer roared, then settled with a steady, even thrum. The floor leveled. The tilt vanished. Everyone straightened, relief visible even through their rigid discipline. Saria, however, swayed. She took a step, then another, but her movements were unsteady. Her legs trembled, her body struggling to readjust to the corrected gravity field. For a Tishari, stumbling was almost worse than defeat in battle. Her pride burned as hot as fire. She glared at Marcus, her voice sharp but shaking. I cannot walk straight. What did you do to me?" The other officers turned, their eyes toward the human engineer, waiting for his response. Marcus finally looked up, wiping a smear of grease from his hands. He met her gaze calmly, without fear. "I didn't do anything to you," he said. "Your body is just adjusting. The field was off for too long. Humans, we're used to shifts like this. We adapt faster." The explanation only made Seria's pride sting harder. Around her, whispers spread. A human had saved the ship when the Tishari systems failed. A human had stood firm when others stumbled. Seria clenched her fists. She wanted to dismiss him, to claim his actions were reckless. But the truth was plain. Without Marcus, the ship would have been in chaos. She steadied herself, her pride forcing her to stand tall again. Yet the words she had spoken, her frustrated complaint, still echoed in the air. And Marcus's calm reply carried more weight than she wanted to admit. For the first time, Commander, Seria felt truly off balance. The corridors of the Tishari ship were narrow, polished, and silent. Every step echoed faintly, as though the metal itself was listening. Humans walked through with curious eyes, marveling at the clean design. Marcus, however, kept his gaze low, memorizing the flow of power lines beneath the deck and the faint vibrations in the walls. To him, the ship was alive, speaking in hums and clicks. After the stabilizer incident, Marcus had expected the Tishari officers to avoid him. He thought they would deny his role and pretend nothing had happened. Instead, whispers followed him, wherever he went. A human had saved them. A human had touched their sacred systems without permission. To some, it was shameful. To others, it was impressive. Commander Seria walked ahead, her posture rigid, but her stride was not as smooth as before. Every so often, a faint wobble disturbed her perfect movement. She tried to hide it, but Marcus noticed. He said nothing. Pride, he knew, was a fragile shield. At last they reached the command chamber, a large room with high ceilings and glowing panels. Tishari officers moved with quiet precision, their eyes flicking between consoles and displays. A star map hovered above the center, showing patrol routes along the outer rim. Seria turned sharply to face the humans. "You will remain here, as observers. Do not interfere again without orders." Marcus gave a small shrug. "Understood." She narrowed her silver eyes, clearly unconvinced by his calm tone. Her pride demanded she take back control, to remind everyone that the Tishari were not weak. She wanted no human shadow following her. The fleet prepared to leave dock. Engines flared, and the ships drifted into the endless dark of space. For hours, everything was calm. The Tishari moved like clockwork, their discipline almost beautiful to watch. But then the ship shuddered. A faint tremor ran through the floor, so slight most would not notice. Marcus felt it at once. He frowned and looked toward the stabilizer panels. Something was wrong again. Before he could speak, alarms blared. This time it wasn't the stabilizer. It was the reactor. Panels lit up red, warning of a containment surge. A misalignment in the energy coils was feeding back into the system. If it wasn't corrected, the reactor would overload. Officers leapt into motion, their voices sharp. "Seal the conduits. Redirect power." But every command was met with failure. The system rejected their commands, error codes flashing. Seria's hands tightened on the console, her voice cut through the chaos. "Stabilize the reactor. Now." Marcus stepped forward. "I can fix it." Seria spun on him, her glare sharp enough to cut steel. "No, you will stay back. This is Tishari technology, far beyond your understanding." Marcus ignored her. He was already moving toward the reactor controls. "I don't need to understand all of it, I just need to see where it's failing." Saria's pride screamed at her to stop him, but another tremor shook the deck. The alarms rose higher. For a moment she hesitated, then gave a tight nod. "Do not make me regret this, human." Marcus grinned faintly. "Wouldn't dream of..." He knelt by the access panel, pulling it open. Energy coils pulsed within, glowing dangerously bright. The system was overloading itself with too much symmetry. Perfect balance feeding into perfect balance until it became unstable. "Of course," Marcus muttered. "You built it too perfectly." "What do you mean?" one officer demanded. "Your systems are like soldiers standing in a line," Marcus explained quickly, his hands moving across the coils. "Perfect, flawless. But if one falls, they all fall together. Humans, we don't build things that way. We expect failure, so we design for it." He reached into the coil array, twisting a connector. Sparks leapt and he flinched but kept going. "Stop!" Saria shouted. "You'll damage it." "I have to," Marcus replied. "It needs some chaos in the order, a little imbalance to break the chain." The Tashari officers stared in shock as Marcus rerouted power through uneven paths, deliberately bending the flow. To them it looked like sabotage. To Marcus it was survival. At last the reactor calmed. The glow dimmed to steady light. The alarms fell silent. The command chamber exhaled as one. The ship was safe. Saria, however, felt her balance shift again, not in her body but in her mind. Her people's perfection had failed twice in one day. A human's messy, reckless methods had saved them both times. She stepped forward, her eyes cold but her voice low. "You risked everything. If you had failed..." Marcus interrupted gently. "But I didn't. You build for perfection. We build for failure. That's why we survive." The words stung. Around them, officers exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time, cracks appeared in their faith. Could it be true? Was their obsession with flawless design actually weakness? Saria turned away, hiding the fire in her eyes. She wanted to dismiss him, to say he had been lucky. But deep down she knew luck alone could not explain it. Humans saw the universe differently. They found strength in imperfection. As the crew dispersed to restore order, Marcus leaned against the wall, arms folded. He looked almost relaxed, but his mind was racing. Twice now the Tashari ship had nearly failed. Something was wrong beyond simple malfunctions. He caught Saria's gaze once more. She stood tall, chin high, but her steps still carried a faint wobble. For all her strength, she was still adjusting, not only to the gravity, but to the presence of a human who refused to play by her rules. Marcus thought back to her angry words. "I can't walk straight. What did you do to me?" He almost smiled. She didn't realize it yet, but the answer was simple. He had shaken her balance, not with tricks or strength, but with something far harder to ignore: human adaptability. The ship glided through the black sea of space, stars drifting silently beyond the hull. To most of the crew, the crisis with the reactor was already behind them. Repairs were underway, and reports were filed. But for Commander Saria, the memory clung like a weight she could not shake. Twice in one day, her ship had stumbled. Twice a human had caught it before it fell. She hated the thought. The Tashari were supposed to be unshakable. Their training, their technology, their discipline, all were unmatched in the galaxy. And yet she still remembered the way her legs had trembled when Marcus repaired the stabilizer. She remembered how the ship had steadied under his reckless, uneven hands when the reactor threatened to fail. Each memory burned like fire against her pride. Saria stormed into the command chamber, her boots striking the deck like drumbeats. Officers stiffened at her presence. She raised her voice, letting it carry across the room. "This cannot continue," she declared. "Our systems, our ship, our honor, none of it will be questioned by an outsider." The officers nodded quickly, but their eyes betrayed unease. Marcus's actions had saved them, and they all knew it. Marcus, standing quietly near the back, lifted a brow. "If you want, Commander, I can stop saving your ship, but I don't think you'd like the result." Gasps filled the chamber. "No, One spoke to Saria that way. Her silver eyes burned as she spun toward him. You dare mock me? Marcus's voice was calm, steady, but it carried a quiet edge. I'm not mocking you, I'm telling you the truth. I didn't cause your problems, I fixed them. But you're so focused on perfection that you can't accept anyone doing things differently. The tension was sharp, like a blade hovering in the air. Officers looked from their commander to the human, waiting for an explosion. Saria's jaw tightened. She took a step closer, her voice low but fierce. You think you understand us? You think you can walk into my ship, touch systems you barely know and call it wisdom? Do you even realize what you've done to me, human? Marcus blinked, caught off guard by the raw frustration in her tone. I can't walk straight, she continued, her words cracking with emotion. My body still resists the stabilizer you touched. My crew whispers when I stumble. Every step feels like a reminder of your interference. What did you do to me? The chamber fell silent. Marcus looked at her carefully, seeing past her anger. He saw a commander who had built her whole life on control, precision, and perfect balance. And he saw how deeply it cut her to lose even a fraction of that control. He spoke softly but firmly. I didn't do anything to you, Commander. What you're feeling is your body fighting against change. It's not weakness, it's just adjustment. Humans live with it every day. Gravity shifts, broken roads, bad weather. We adapt. It's what we do. Maybe your people never had to, but now you do, and that scares you. Whispers rippled among the officers. The human's words struck like lightning, too sharp to ignore. Saria's fists clenched. She wanted to deny it, to crush his argument with her authority. But deep inside, a tiny part of her knew he was right. The perfect Tashari way had never been tested against true unpredictability. And unpredictability was what humans seemed to thrive in. She stepped back, drawing in a slow breath. Her voice softened, though it carried steel. So you claim it is go adjustment, then prove it. Show me this human adaptability you speak of. If you are so skilled, then teach me to walk straight again, the officers gasped. A commander asking a human for help? It was unthinkable. Marcus tilted his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Are you asking for my help, Commander? That almost sounds like gratitude. Her glare returned at once. Do not twist my words. This is no request, it is a test. Fail, and you will answer for your arrogance. Marcus chuckled softly, shaking his head. Fine. A test it is. He motioned toward the open floor of the chamber. First rule of humans, we don't always walk in a straight line. Sometimes we stumble. Sometimes we fall. The important part is learning to keep moving. The Tashari officers looked horrified. To them, stumbling was shameful. Yet Saria stepped forward, her pride forcing her to accept the challenge. Marcus began simply. He adjusted the gravity controls slightly, creating a faint tilt. To the crew it was uncomfortable but not dangerous. Walk across the room, he told her. Saria lifted her chin and strode forward. At once the tilt dragged her to the side. She caught herself, her movement stiff. Laughter threatened to rise among her crew, but fear of their commander kept it silent. Marcus spoke calmly. Don't fight it so hard. Let your body adjust. Flow with the shift, then correct. You're not a machine, Commander. You're alive. Use that. She grit her teeth and tried again. This time she swayed less, but her pride burned hotter. Minutes passed. Again and again, Marcus adjusted the field, shifting, tilting, changing directions. Each time, Saria fought to adapt. Each time she stumbled a little less. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her silver eyes narrowed with fierce determination. Slowly, painfully, her movements grew steadier. At last she reached the end of the chamber, without faltering. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but her posture was proud once more. The officers stared in stunned silence. Their commander had stumbled, yes, but she had risen again, stronger than before. Saria turned to Marcus, her voice low. This adaptability, it is not elegant. It is not perfect. But it works. Marcus smiled faintly. That's humanity. For you. We don't need perfect, we just need to keep going. For the first time, Syria did not look at him with only scorn. There was something new in her eyes, something close to respect, though she would never say it aloud. But deep within her, she still felt unsettled. This human had shaken her balance, not just in body, but in spirit, and she feared what other truths he might reveal if she let him too close. The Tishari ship sailed deeper into the rim of Council space, where the stars thinned and the void grew quiet. Patrol duty was usually routine, but after the 2 malfunctions, the crew was restless. Every vibration made them tense. Every flicker of a light made them glance at Marcus as though expecting him to fix it. Commander Syria hated that. She could feel her authority bending under the weight of one human's presence. But she hated something else even more, the thought that he might be necessary. For days she tested him, giving small tasks, watching carefully. He was clumsy compared to her officers. His hands lacked their polished grace, his methods seemed careless. And yet his solutions worked. Where her people saw only failure, Marcus found another path. It was not elegance. It was something far more dangerous. It was creativity. One evening, as the ship drifted along the outer rim, the alarms rang again. This time it was no malfunction. A ship had appeared on the edge of their sensors. Unknown design, no council markings. Syria stood tall at the command console. Report. Unknown vessel approaching. No response to hails. Power readings are high. Marcus frowned at the display. The ship looked jagged, patchwork, like it had been built from scavenged parts. Yet its energy signature burned bright, too bright for its size. Pirates? Captain Rhodes of the human team asked quietly. Syria's silver eyes narrowed. No. Worse. Raiders. The word carried weight. Raiders were outcasts who thrived in lawless space. They preyed on ships, stripping them bare, leaving nothing but wreckage. And the Tishari, with all their pride, had never forgotten the humiliation of losing patrols to these scavengers. The raider ship surged closer, weapons powering. Shields up, Syria commanded. The ship shuddered as energy fields flared to life. The raiders fired. Bolts of plasma struck the shields, shaking the deck. Officers rushed to their stations, their movements fast but tense. Marcus braced himself, eyes darting over the displays. He saw the shield outputs flickering again. Too much symmetry, too much strain on the system. They wouldn't hold for long. Commander, he said quickly, your shields are strong, but they're too rigid. The raiders' fire is uneven. If you adapt the frequency— Silence, Syria snapped. We do not need human tricks. The ship rocked under another hit. Sparks rained from a console. A Tishari officer cried out, clutching a burned hand. Marcus swore under his breath and pushed forward. You'll lose the shields if you don't let me help. Syria's pride screamed at her to deny him. But the alarm lights, the shaking, deck the fear in her crew's eyes, they all pressed against her. At last she gave a sharp nod. Do it. Marcus slid into the shield controls, fingers flying. He rerouted the power, creating tiny fluctuations in the shield frequency. Instead of trying to stand like a perfect wall, the shields now shifted unevenly, bending with each hit. The next plasma bolt struck, and instead of cracking, the shield rippled, absorbing the blast. The crew gasped. Syria's eyes widened. The human had done it again. The battle raged. The raiders circled, firing wildly. But with Marcus's adjustment, the Tishari ship held firm. Return fire lit the void, striking the raider vessel again and again until at last it limped away. Engines, sputtering. Cheers erupted across the command chamber. The crew was alive, victorious. Syria, however, felt none of the joy. She felt only the weight of revelation. Marcus stepped back from the console, his expression calm. Your systems are strong, Commander. But strength without flexibility breaks. His words were simple, but they hit harder than any plasma bolt. She thought of the stabilizer, the reactor, the shields, all saved by human hands. Each time her perfection had failed. Each time his imperfection had endured. That night, when the ship returned to quiet patrol, Syria summoned Marcus to her private chamber. The walls glowed with soft light, the air heavy with silence. She stood at the window staring into the endless stars. When Marcus entered, she did not turn. Her voice was steady, but low. I was raised to believe the Tashari were flawless. We trained our bodies until we never stumbled. We built our machines until they never faltered. And yet, in only a few days, you have shown me how fragile that belief is. Marcus leaned against the wall, arms folded. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I just do what I know. Humans don't have the luxury of perfection. We fail all the time. But we learn. We keep moving. Syria finally turned. Her silver eyes, always cold and sharp, now held something softer. Perhaps that is your strength. Not discipline, not power, but the will to rise after every fall. She stepped closer, her voice quiet. Do you understand what that means for my people? If what you say is true, then everything we built our pride on is incomplete. Marcus nodded slowly. Not incomplete, just unfinished. You've mastered one path. Maybe it's time to learn another. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The proud commander and the stubborn human stood face to face, the weight of revelation between them. At last, Syria spoke again, her tone firm. Do not mistake this for surrender, human. I will not kneel to your ways, but... She hesitated, then forced the words out. I will learn. Marcus smiled faintly. That's all anyone can do. She turned back to the stars, her posture tall, but her heart uneasy. For the first time in her life, Syria did not feel certain of her people's superiority. And, for the first time, she did not see humans as fragile children. They were something else entirely, something dangerous, something necessary. The days after the raider attack were quiet, but the silence felt heavy. The crew repaired systems, polished the scorched hull, and returned to patrol routes. Yet every Tashari officer carried a shadow in their thoughts. Their ship, built with the best of their technology, had survived not because of perfection, but because of a human's strange, uneven methods. Commander Syria carried that shadow more than anyone. Her people's pride had been her armor all her life. Now cracks lined that armor. She moved through the corridors with her usual sharp stride, but inside she wrestled with questions she could not silence. Humans were supposed to be clumsy, fragile, and reckless, and yet when order broke, it was the human who stood steady. Marcus had not only repaired machines, he had unsettled her very view of strength. One evening, she found him alone in the docking bay. He sat cross-legged on the floor, tools scattered, around him repairing a small drone. His movements were unhurried, almost careless, but every piece seemed to fall into place. Syria stepped closer, her silver eyes cool. You work without discipline, she said. Marcus glanced up, smirking, faintly. Funny thing is, I thought that was discipline. Maybe just not your kind. She studied him silently. The drone whirred to life, hovering in the air before drifting in a clumsy circle. Marcus laughed at its uneven flight, but Syria frowned. It is unstable, she said. It works, Marcus replied. That's enough. The simple answer cut deeper than he knew. For the Tashari, enough was never acceptable. But for humans, enough was survival. Before Syria could respond, alarms rang through the bay. Commander! A voice called over. The comms. Multiple raider ships inbound. They outnumber us 3-1. Syria's body stiffened. She strode to the comm panel. Raise shields. Prepare weapons. The Tashari ship powered up, engines roaring, shields flaring to life. On the main display, 3 raider vessels appeared, circling like predators. Their patched hulls gleamed with stolen tech, their weapons glowing. The crew moved with trained precision. Yet fear stirred in their eyes. Even Tashari discipline had limits. 3 raider ships against 1 was not a fair fight. Saria stood at the center, voice sharp. We do not retreat. Tashari do not bow to scavengers. Marcus stepped to her side. And humans don't like impossible odds, which means we get creative. She gave him a look torn between irritation and reluctant trust. Speak. Marcus. Study the raider formation. They're expecting you to fight perfect. Straight lines, direct fire, no mistakes. That's how they've beaten Tashari patrols before. So we give them something else, something messy. Messy? Saria repeated, her tone almost insulted. Exactly, Marcus said. He leaned closer, pointing at the display. Split, power unevenly between weapons. Randomize shield frequencies. Jerk the ship off course at odd intervals. To them it'll look like the systems are failing. They'll rush in to finish us, and that's when we hit them where it hurts. The officers stared in disbelief, intentionally making their ship unstable. Atnus. But Saria's mind raced. She remembered stumbling under his training. She remembered shields bending instead of breaking. She remembered the words, strength without flexibility breaks. Her pride wavered, then hardened in a new direction. She turned to her crew. Do as he says. The officers hesitated, shocked. That is an order, she barked. Reluctantly, they obeyed. Systems shifted. Power surged unevenly. The ship lurched in odd bursts, shields flickering strangely. To an outside eye, it looked like chaos. To the raiders, it looked like weakness. The enemy ships dove in, hungry for the kill. Now, Marcus whispered. Saria gave the command. Weapons fired, not in perfect volleys, but in unpredictable bursts. Shots struck the raiders where their defenses were weakest. Shields bent, hulls cracked. The Tashari ship twisted and rolled with sudden jerks, dodging fire in ways no raider expected. The battle turned. One raider ship exploded in a flash of light. Another limped away, engines smoking. The third tried to flee, but Saria's final shot pierced its hull, sending it spinning into the void. Silence fell across the command chamber. The crew stared at the display, stunned. They had won, against impossible odds. Saria stood tall, her silver eyes fierce. Slowly she turned to Marcus. Your chaos saved us. Marcus shook his head. Not chaos. Adaptability. There's a difference. For a moment her pride resisted. But then, before her crew, she did the unthinkable. She bowed her head slightly, toward the human. Then today the Tashari learned from humanity. The crew gasped. Never before had a commander admitted such words. But as they looked at their battered yet victorious ship, no one could deny the truth. Later, in the quiet of her chamber, Saria replayed the battle in her mind. She remembered her first complaint, the frustration in her voice. I can't walk straight. What did you do to me? Now she understood. He had not broken her balance. He had shown her another kind of balance, one built not on perfection, but on survival, on will, on the courage to stumble and rise again. For the first time, Saria smiled faintly. It was small, but real. Perhaps walking straight was not the only way forward. Perhaps stumbling, learning, and rising again was the greater strength. And perhaps, just perhaps, humanity's strange, reckless way was not weakness at all.